The Vellani Empire had conquered 47 species across 3 galaxies. They were masters of war. Their ships could burn entire planets. Their soldiers feared nothing. In 10,000 years, no species had ever defeated them in battle. Commander Torak stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Victory. He was tall, even for a Vellani. His gray scales were covered with scars from 100 battles. His yellow eyes had watched civilizations fall. He had personally overseen the destruction of 12 worlds. Now he looked at the small blue planet on his view screen. Earth, the natives called it. A tiny world circling an ordinary star in an unremarkable corner of the galaxy. "Report," Torak commanded. His science officer stepped forward. "The dominant species calls themselves humans. They have primitive technology. No faster than light travel. No energy shields. Their weapons are based on chemical explosions and nuclear fission. Compared to our technology, they are children playing with fire." Torak smiled. His sharp teeth gleamed in the bridge lights. "How many of them?" "Approximately 8 billion. 8 billion workers for our mines," Torak said. 8 billion slaves for our empire. This will be an easy conquest." Behind him, 200 warships held formation. Each ship carried enough firepower to destroy a continent. Together, they could crack a planet in half. The humans had no idea what was coming for them. On Earth, it was a quiet night in Daejeon, South Korea. Yuna sat alone in the observatory, drinking cold coffee and watching her computer screens. She was 28 years old, with tired eyes and messy hair. She had been an astronomer for 5 years. Most nights were boring. She tracked asteroids, recorded star movements, and wrote reports that nobody read. Tonight was different. Her computer made a sound she had never heard before. An alert. Something was approaching Earth. Something big. Yuna leaned forward and looked at the data. Then she looked again. Her coffee cup fell from her hand and shattered on the floor. 200 objects were entering the solar system. They were not asteroids. They were not comets. They were moving in perfect formation. They were slowing down. They were ships. Yuna grabbed her phone with shaking hands. She called her supervisor. Then her supervisor called the government. Within 1 hour, every major nation on Earth knew the truth. They were not alone in the universe. And the visitors were not coming in peace. The Vellani fleet stopped near Earth's moon. Commander Torak ordered his communications officer to broadcast a message on all frequencies. He wanted every human on the planet to hear his words. "People of Earth," Torak's voice boomed across every television, every radio, every phone on the planet. "I am Commander Torak of the Vellani Empire. We have conquered 47 species. We have never been defeated. Your world now belongs to us." He paused, letting his words sink in. "You have 72 hours to surrender. Lay down your weapons. Present your leaders for judgment. Serve us, and you will live as slaves. Resist, and you will die as dust. There is no third option. There is no escape. There is no hope." The message ended. Torak leaned back in his command chair, satisfied. He had delivered this speech many times before. He knew what would happen next. Panic, chaos, leaders begging for mercy, militaries trying to fight and failing. It was always the same. But as he watched Earth through his view screen, something strange happened. Nothing. There was no panic. No chaos. The human military forces did not scramble to attack. Their nuclear weapons remained in their silos. Their leaders did not broadcast desperate pleas for mercy. Instead, they simply waited. Torak frowned. "What are they doing?" His intelligence officer checked her instruments. "They appear to be gathering, Commander. Their leaders are traveling to a single location, a city called Seoul. They are surrendering?" "Unknown, sir. but their behavior is unusual. Torak had conquered many species. Some fought bravely. Some surrendered quickly. Some tried to run. But he had never seen a species react like this. The humans seemed almost calm, as if they had been expecting this, as if they had a plan. In Seoul, the world's leaders gathered in an emergency summit. Presidents, prime ministers, generals, and diplomats filled a massive conference hall. They spoke in hushed voices, their faces serious but not afraid. At the center of the room sat an old man named Suho. He was 82 years old. His hair was white, his face was lined with wrinkles, but his eyes were sharp and clear. He had been a general once. He had fought in 3 wars. He had seen things that would break most men. Now he looked at the world's most powerful leaders and smiled. "So," he said, "they finally came." The American president leaned forward. "You expected this?" "Not specifically," Suho replied. "But I knew someone would come eventually. The universe is too big for us to be alone. I always wondered what would happen when we met another species." He chuckled softly. "I hoped they would be friendly, but I prepared for the opposite." "What do you mean, prepared?" Suho stood up slowly, his old bones creaking. 40 years ago, I created a secret program. It was called The Last Option. Its purpose was simple. If aliens ever invaded Earth, we would not fight them with weapons. We would fight them with truth. The room fell silent. "What truth?" the Chinese president asked. Suho looked around the room. His eyes were sad but determined. "The truth about what we really are. The truth about what we have done to each other. The truth about humanity's darkest secret." He pressed a button on the table. A screen lit up behind him showing images, wars, battles, cities burning, bodies piled in mass graves, mushroom clouds rising over ruined cities. "We are the most violent species this planet has ever produced," Suho said quietly. "We have been killing each other since we learned to hold weapons. We have perfected the art of war. We have created weapons that can destroy our entire world many times over. We have committed horrors that would make these aliens vomit." He turned to face the leaders. "And that is exactly what we are going to show them." On the Vellani flagship, Commander Torak received a message from Earth. It was from a human diplomat named Dongwu. "Commander Torak," Dongwu said. His voice was calm and polite. "We accept your terms. But before you invade, we request one thing. Allow us to show you our history. Our complete history. Our darkest secret. After you see it, if you still wish to conquer us, we will surrender without resistance." Torak laughed. "Why would I care about your history?" "Because, Commander, we want you to understand exactly what you are trying to conquer. We want you to make an informed decision. Surely the great Vellani Empire is not afraid of a simple history lesson?" Torak stopped laughing. The human was challenging him, insulting his courage. No species had ever dared to do that. "Fine," Torak growled. "I will come to your planet. I will see your pathetic history. And then I will burn your world to ashes." "We will be waiting," Dongwu replied. "And Commander? Bring your strongest officers. You will need them." The transmission ended. Torak stared at the view screen for a long moment. For the first time in his long career, he felt something strange. Something he had not felt in centuries. Doubt. He pushed the feeling aside. These were primitive creatures. They had no ships, no real weapons, no power. What could they possibly show him that would matter? He would soon find out. The Vellani shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere like a falling star. Inside sat Commander Torak and 6 of his best officers. They were the elite of the Vellani military. Each one had conquered worlds. Each one had killed thousands. They feared nothing in the universe. But as they looked through the windows at the blue planet below, some of them felt uneasy. The humans had not acted like prey. They had acted like something else entirely. Something the Villani had never encountered before. The shuttle landed in an empty field outside Seoul. The grass was green and soft. The sky was gray with clouds. In the distance, the city's tall buildings touched the sky. Millions of humans lived there, going about their daily lives as if an alien invasion was not happening. A small group of humans waited near the landing site. At the front stood Dongwoo, the diplomat who had sent the message. He was a thin man in his 50s, wearing a simple black suit. His hair was gray at the temples. His face was calm and friendly. Behind him stood a woman in military uniform. Her name tag read Yoonji. She was tall for a human, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. And beside her was an old woman with white hair and a walking cane. Her name was Ji-won. She was 80 years old, a historian who had spent her entire life studying war. Commander Torak stepped off the shuttle. His massive form towered over the humans. His gray scales reflected the pale sunlight. His yellow eyes studied them like a predator studying prey. "I am here," Torak said. "Show me this secret of yours." "I am not a patient being." Dongwoo bowed slightly. "Welcome to Earth, Commander. I am glad you came. Please follow us. The journey is not long, but what you will see, it will stay with you forever." Torak snorted. "Nothing can surprise me. I have seen entire species die screaming. I have watched planets burn. Your little history lesson will not impress me." "We shall see," Ji-won said quietly. Her voice was soft and sad. "We shall see." They walked through the field toward a group of black vehicles. The Villani officers kept their hands near their weapons, expecting a trap. But the humans made no threatening moves. They were perfectly calm. Too calm. The vehicles took them to the edge of the city, where a massive concrete building stood alone on a hill. It had no windows, no decorations, just thick gray walls and a single steel door. Armed soldiers stood guard at the entrance, but they stepped aside as the group approached. "This is the archive of human conflict," Ji-won explained. "It was built 50 years ago. It contains the complete record of every war humanity has ever fought. Every battle, every weapon, every death. We built it to remind ourselves of what we are capable of." She looked up at Torak with her old, tired eyes. "And now we will share it with you." The steel door opened with a deep grinding sound. Cold air rushed out from the darkness inside. Torak felt a strange chill run down his scales. It was just cold air, he told himself. Nothing more. They entered the archive. The first room was large and round, with a domed ceiling. The walls were covered with numbers. Millions of numbers, carved into the stone in neat rows. "These are the death counts," Ji-won said. "Every number represents 1 million human beings killed by other human beings. The oldest wars are at the bottom. The most recent are at the top." Torak walked closer to the wall. The numbers went on and on, covering every surface. He tried to count them but gave up. There were too many. "How many?" he asked. "In recorded history alone, we have killed approximately 1 billion of our own species in organized conflicts. That does not include murders, massacres, or genocides. That is just war." One of Torak's officers made a choking sound. 1 billion? You killed 1 billion of your own kind?" "Yes," Ji-won said simply. "And we became very good at it." They moved deeper into the archive. The next section was dedicated to ancient wars. Paintings showed armies clashing with swords and spears. Models displayed siege weapons designed to break city walls. Glass cases held actual weapons, still stained with blood that was thousands of years old. Jiwan explained each display with a historian's calm precision. She told them about the wars of ancient empires, about cities that were completely destroyed, every man, woman, and child put to death, about generals who built pyramids from the skulls of their enemies. The Vallani listened in silence. They were conquerors themselves, but even they had never heard of such brutality. "This is from an era when you had only simple weapons," Torek said slowly. "Swords and arrows. You were primitives." "Yes," Jiwan agreed. "We were primitives. And yet we still found ways to kill each other by the millions. Imagine what we did when our weapons improved." They entered the next section. This one covered the age of gunpowder. Cannons, muskets, rifles, artillery. The paintings showed bodies piled in trenches, cities burning, ships sinking in blood-red seas. The numbers on the walls grew larger. "In this period," Jiwan said, "we developed weapons that could kill from a distance. No longer did warriors need to look into the eyes of their enemies. They could kill from far away, without seeing the faces of the dead. This made killing easier. The death counts increased." She stopped in front of a large painting. It showed a battlefield covered in smoke and fire. Thousands of men lay dead in the mud. "This was the Battle of Somme," she said. "In a single day, 20,000 of our soldiers died. In a single day. And the battle continued for months. Over 1 million casualties in total." Commander Torak stared at the painting. His yellow eyes were wide. "Why?" he asked. "What were you fighting for? Resources? Territory? Survival?" Jiwan shook her head slowly. "We were fighting for a few miles of mud. Mud that nobody wanted. Mud that was worthless. But we kept sending our young men to die for it anyway. Day after day. Month after month. Until the ground was more blood than earth." She turned to face him directly. "That is what humans do, Commander. We do not fight for logical reasons. We fight because we cannot stop ourselves. We fight until there is nothing left to fight for. And then we find new reasons to fight again." One of the Vallani officers stepped back. His scales had turned pale. "Commander, I do not feel well. May I return to the shuttle?" "No," Torek said firmly. "We will see everything. All of it." Jiwan nodded slowly. "Very well. But I must warn you. What comes next is much worse. What I have shown you so far was from a time when we were young and foolish. What comes next? That was when we became truly dangerous." She gestured toward a heavy door at the end of the hall. Above it, carved in stone, were 2 words in the human language. Yunji translated them. "The modern age." Jiwan pushed open the door. "Welcome to the 20th century," she said. "Welcome to the age when humanity stopped playing at war and started doing it properly." Cold air rushed out from the darkness beyond. And somewhere in the depths of that darkness, a screen flickered to life, showing images that would haunt the Vallani for the rest of their very long lives. Torak stepped through the door. He did not know it yet, but he was about to witness horrors that would break something inside him. Horrors that would make him question everything he believed about war, conquest, and the nature of intelligent life. He was about to learn why humanity had hidden this place deep underground. He was about to learn what human beings were truly capable of. And he would never be the same again. The room was dark, except for the glow of screens. Hundreds of screens covered the walls, floor to ceiling. Each one showed different footage. Different horrors. The sound was muted, but the images spoke louder than any words could. Commander Torak stood frozen at the entrance. His yellow eyes moved from screen to screen, unable to look away. Behind him, his officers made sounds of shock and disgust. "This section covers the First World War," Jiwan said. Her voice was flat, emotionless. She had seen these images too many times to feel anything anymore. It lasted 4 years. 17 million dead. 20 million wounded. We used new weapons. Machine guns. Poison gas. Tanks. Airplanes dropping bombs. We turned war into an industry. The screen showed soldiers charging into walls of bullets. Bodies hanging on barbed wire. Men drowning in mud. Soldiers screaming as poison gas burned their lungs from the inside. Why? Torak whispered. Why would you do this to yourselves? We did not know how to stop, Jiwan replied. We had made promises. Signed treaties. We felt we had to keep fighting, even when the reasons for fighting no longer made sense. Pride, honor, revenge. These things mattered more to us than survival. She led them deeper into the room. But this was not the worst. 20 years later, we did it again. We called it the Second World War. This time, 70 to 85 million died. It was the deadliest conflict in human history. The screens changed. Now they showed cities burning, tanks rolling through destroyed streets, soldiers marching in endless columns, planes filling the sky like swarms of insects. One screen showed a mushroom cloud rising over a city. Torak stared at it. What is that? That is a nuclear weapon, Jiwan said. We developed it during the war. A single bomb that could destroy an entire city in seconds. We dropped 2 of them on civilian populations. 120,000 people died instantly. Many more died slowly from radiation in the months that followed. You use such weapons on your own planet? On your own species? Yes, and after the war ended, we built more of them. Many more. Today, we have approximately 12,000 nuclear weapons. Enough to destroy every city on Earth. Enough to end human civilization completely. One of Torak's officers fell to his knees. He was trembling. Commander, please. I cannot see any more of this. But G1 was not finished. She led them to another section of the archive. This one was different. No screens showing battles. Instead, there were photographs. Thousands of photographs covering every wall. Photographs of faces. Men, women, children, young and old. All of them looking directly at the camera. These are victims of genocide, Jiwan said softly. Mass killings of entire groups of people. Not because of war, not because of territory, but because of hate. Pure hate. She stopped in front of a wall covered with faces. This section is dedicated to the Holocaust. During the Second World War, one group of humans systematically murdered 6 million other humans. They built special camps designed for killing. They developed efficient methods for mass murder. They kept detailed records of every death. The photographs showed skeletal bodies piled in ditches. Children in striped uniforms behind barbed wire. Gas chambers, ovens, mountains of shoes taken from the dead. They killed families, Jiwan continued. Entire families. Grandparents, parents, children, babies. They killed them because they were different. Because they worshipped a different god. Because they were born into the wrong group. Commander Torak felt something he had never felt before. His stomach turned. His scales prickled with cold sweat. He had killed millions in his career. He had burned worlds. But he had never seen anything like this. You did this to innocent people? To children? Yes. For no military purpose? Just to kill them? Yes. Jiwan turned to face him. Her old eyes were filled with pain and memory. And it was not the only time. We have committed genocide again and again throughout our history. Rwanda, Cambodia, Armenia, the list goes on. We kill each other not just for land or resources, but for hate, for ideology, for nothing at all. She led them to the next room. This one was smaller, more personal. In the center sat an old man in a wheelchair. He was very thin, very fragile. His hands shook constantly, but his eyes were clear and sharp. "This is Hyunsik," Jiwon said. "He's 98 years old. He survived the Korean War." Hyunsik looked up at the Villani with no fear. He's seen too much horror in his life to be afraid of aliens. "Sit," he said in a weak but steady voice. "I will tell you what war really is." The Villani sat. They had no choice. Something in the old man's presence commanded respect. "I was 12 years old when the war came to my village," Hyunsik began. "One day we were farmers, working in the fields. The next day, soldiers came. They wore the same uniforms as our neighbors. They spoke the same language as us. But they were enemies now, because a line on a map had been drawn differently." He paused, his eyes distant with memory. "They burned our village. Every house. Every barn. Every tree. They said we were traitors because we lived on the wrong side of the line. My father tried to protect us. They shot him in front of my mother." Tears rolled down the old man's wrinkled cheeks, but his voice remained steady. "My mother grabbed my sister and me. We ran into the mountains. It was winter, so cold that the tears froze on our faces. We had no food, no shelter. We ate tree bark to survive. We drank snow." He held up his hands. 2 fingers were missing. "I lost these to frostbite. My sister lost more than that. She was 8 years old. She died in my arms on the 3rd night. I carried her body for 2 more days because I could not accept that she was gone." The room was completely silent. Even the hardened Villani officers could not speak. "I survived," Hyunsik continued. "Somehow I survived. I grew up. I became a teacher. I taught children about peace, about kindness, about the importance of understanding each other. But I never forgot what I saw, what we did to each other, what we are capable of." He looked directly at Commander Torak. "You think you are conquerors. You think you understand war. But you do not. You fight for resources, for power, for expansion. Those are logical reasons. We do not need logical reasons. We kill our own brothers. We burn our own homes. We destroy everything we love for pride and hate and revenge." He leaned forward in his wheelchair. "You want to invade our planet? You want to give us a common enemy? You want to unite 8 billion humans against a single target?" Hyunsik smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Please, go ahead. We have been waiting for this moment for a very long time." Commander Torak stood up abruptly. His heart was pounding. His hands were shaking. For the first time in centuries, he felt something he barely recognized. Fear. "I have seen enough," he said. His voice cracked slightly. "Take me back to my shuttle." "There is more," Jiwon said calmly. "Much more. You have not seen our chemical weapons, our biological weapons, our weapons that can turn the atmosphere itself into fire. You have not seen what we did in Vietnam, in Iraq, in Syria. You have not seen our plans for future wars. Wars we have been preparing for since the invention of nuclear weapons." I said enough. Torak roared. His voice echoed through the archive. The photographs of dead faces seemed to stare at him from every direction. Millions of dead eyes, accusing him of something he did not understand. Jiwon nodded slowly. "Very well. But before you go, let me ask you one question, Commander." She stepped closer to him. This tiny old woman, facing a conqueror who had destroyed 12 worlds. "You have conquered 47 species," she said. "How many of them had done to themselves what we have done? How many of them had perfected the art of killing their own kind? How many of them had built weapons capable of destroying their entire world, and then kept building more?" Torak could not answer. "None," Jiwan said. That is why you conquered them. They were not prepared for violence on the scale that we practice every day. But we are different. We have been at war with ourselves since the beginning of our existence. We have been training for this moment for 10,000 years. She smiled sadly. And now you want to fight us. Are you sure that is wise? Commander Torak turned and walked out of the archive without another word. His officers followed in silence. None of them looked back. Behind them, the photographs of the dead watched them go. And deep in the darkness of the archive, the screens continued to play their endless footage of human violence, waiting for the next visitor who needed to learn the truth. The shuttle ride back to the Volani flagship was silent. Commander Torak sat alone in the corner, staring at nothing. His officers kept their distance. They had never seen their commander like this. They had never seen him afraid. When they docked with the Eternal Victory, Torak went straight to the war room. He called his senior staff for an emergency meeting. Within minutes, the room was filled with the most powerful military minds in the Volani Empire. Commander, his second-in-command said carefully, "You look unwell. What happened on the surface?" Torak did not answer immediately. He walked to the large view screen that showed Earth floating peacefully in space. Such a beautiful planet. Such a terrifying species. Run the invasion simulations again, Torak ordered. Use the new data. Everything we learned about human psychology, their history, their weapons, their behavior patterns. I want accurate projections. The tactical officers exchanged confused looks, but obeyed. They fed the new information into their computers. They adjusted their calculations. They ran the simulations 100 times. The results appeared on the main screen. The room fell silent. This cannot be correct, the chief analyst said. The numbers must be wrong. Check them again, Torak said quietly. They checked. The numbers stayed the same. Based on our analysis, the analyst said slowly, reading from the screen, if we invade Earth, we will face resistance from approximately 2 billion humans. 2 billion soldiers? Another officer asked. That is more than our entire population. Not soldiers. Civilians. Men, women, elderly, children. According to human history, when faced with an external threat, their entire population becomes combatants. They do not surrender. They do not flee. They fight until they are dead or their enemy is destroyed. The analyst's voice trembled slightly as he continued. Our projected casualties for a complete occupation of Earth are approximately 40 million Volani soldiers. That is nearly half of our entire military force. And that is the optimistic estimate. Commander Torak closed his eyes. He had expected bad news. He had not expected this. What about their weapons? Another officer stepped forward. He was the fleet's weapons specialist, an expert in analyzing enemy technology. His face was pale. Commander, I have studied human weapons development. 80 years ago, they were fighting with rifles and artillery. Basic chemical-powered weapons. Then they developed nuclear weapons. In a single generation, they increased their destructive capability by a factor of 10,000. He pointed to a graph on the screen. This is their weapons development curve. It is not linear. It is exponential. Every decade, they become dramatically more dangerous. They currently possess 12,000 nuclear warheads. That is enough to destroy our entire invasion fleet multiple times. Our shields can withstand nuclear weapons, another officer protested. Yes, our shields can withstand a few nuclear weapons. But 12,000? Delivered simultaneously from thousands of locations? Our simulations show that within the first hour of invasion, they would launch everything they have. They would accept the destruction of their own planet if it meant taking us with them. The weapons specialist looked directly at Torak. Commander, They have a military doctrine called mutually assured destruction. They invented it during a conflict between two groups of their own species. The doctrine states that if one side attacks, both sides will be completely destroyed. For 50 years, they lived under this threat. They accepted it. They were willing to end their own civilization rather than lose. "That is insane," someone whispered. "Yes," Torek said. "That is exactly the point." He turned to his intelligence officer. "What else did you learn about their psychology?" She stepped forward nervously. She was young for her position, brilliant but inexperienced. What she had discovered on Earth had shaken her to her core. "Commander, humans are not like any species we have encountered. They are social creatures, but they are also incredibly violent. They form strong bonds with family and community, but they also murder, betray, and destroy those same bonds regularly." She pulled up more data on the screen. In their history, they have fought wars over religion, ideology, territory, resources, revenge, honor, and sometimes for no clear reason at all. They have killed members of their own families over inheritance disputes. They have destroyed their own cities rather than let enemies capture them. The officer took a deep breath before continuing. "But the most concerning finding is this. When humans face an external threat, their internal conflicts cease immediately. Groups that have been killing each other for generations will unite against a common enemy. This has happened repeatedly throughout their history." She showed images of former enemies fighting side by side. Old hatreds forgotten in the face of a greater threat. "If we invade, we will not be fighting individual nations. We will be fighting all 8 billion of them. Every single human on the planet will become our enemy. And based on their history, they will never stop fighting. Never. Even if we kill 90% of them, the remaining 10% will continue to resist." In a small apartment in Bazan, far below the orbiting fleet, an old man sat with his grandson. Suho had been a general once, long ago. Now he was just a grandfather, watching the aliens hover over his city. His grandson Minho was 15 years old. He was scared. Everyone was scared. But his grandfather seemed strangely calm. "Grandfather, why are you not afraid?" Suho smiled and put his arm around the boy. "Because I have seen what we can do to each other, Minho. I've been to war. I have seen men do terrible things and beautiful things, sometimes in the same moment." He pointed out the window at the alien ships. "Those creatures up there, they think they are predators. They think we are prey. They have conquered many species, I am sure. Species that were peaceful. Species that did not know how to fight. Species that surrendered when the situation seemed hopeless." His old eyes hardened. "But we are not peaceful. We are not prey. And we never surrender, even when we should. We are the most stubborn, violent, determined species this galaxy has ever produced. We have been killing each other for 10,000 years, and we still have not figured out how to stop." Minho looked at his grandfather with confusion. "That sounds like a bad thing." "It is a bad thing. It is terrible. It is our greatest shame." Suho nodded slowly. "But it is also our greatest strength. Because those aliens up there, they are not prepared for what we are. They have never faced a species that would rather die than submit. They have never faced 8 billion people who have been training for war since the day they were born." He hugged his grandson tighter. "They came here expecting to find sheep. Instead, they found wolves. And now they have to decide whether the conquest is worth the cost." On the Villani flagship, Commander Torak made his decision. "Cancel the invasion," he said quietly. The room erupted in shock. "Commander, you cannot be serious. We have never retreated from a conquest." The Empire will survive," Torak interrupted. "If we invade this planet, we will lose half our military force. That will leave us vulnerable to our actual enemies. The other empires will see our weakness. They will attack. He turned to face his officers. I have conquered 12 worlds. I have killed millions. I have never felt fear in battle. But what I saw on that planet, those creatures are not like us. They are not like anything we have ever encountered. He pulled up the footage from the archive on the main screen. The images of war, genocide, nuclear explosions, and endless human violence played silently before them. Look at what they do to themselves. Look at the joy they take in destruction. Look at the weapons they have built to kill their own kind. And then ask yourself this question. He paused. What will they build to kill us? No one had an answer. We are leaving, Torek said. Prepare the fleet for departure. We will report to the Council that this planet is not worth the cost. We will recommend that Earth be placed under permanent quarantine. No contact. No trade. No approach. He looked out at the blue planet one last time. Let them stay in their corner of the galaxy. Let them keep fighting themselves. And pray to whatever gods you believe in that they never come looking for us. Commander Torak stood before the Galactic Council via holographic transmission. The council chamber was located on the Vellani homeworld, thousands of light years away. 12 council leaders sat in a semicircle, their massive forms casting long shadows across the polished floor. Behind them, banners displayed the symbols of 47 conquered species. You recommend retreat, the senior council leader said. His voice was cold with disbelief. From a species that has not even achieved faster-than-light travel. From primitives who still fight among themselves. You, Commander Torak, who has never lost a battle, now ask permission to run away. Torak kept his voice steady. I recommend strategic withdrawal. There is a difference. Explain. Torak transmitted the files he had collected on Earth. The wars. The weapons. The death counts. The psychological analyses. The council leaders watched in silence as thousands of years of human violence played across their screens. This species has spent its entire existence fighting itself, Torak said. Not for logical reasons. Not for survival. They fight because violence is part of their nature. They cannot stop themselves. They have developed weapons capable of destroying their entire planet, and they came within minutes of using them multiple times. He paused to let the information sink in. And yet they are still here. They did not destroy themselves. Somehow, they learned to control their violence. They built a fragile peace. But that peace exists only because they have no external enemies. Our invasion would change that. The senior leader leaned forward. You believe they would unite against us? I do not believe it. I know it. Their history proves it. Every time they have faced a common enemy, they have put aside their internal conflicts and fought together. Our invasion would give 8 billion violent, creative, determined creatures a single target for all their rage. Torak pulled up the weapons analysis. They currently possess 12,000 nuclear weapons. Our shields can withstand limited nuclear assault. They cannot withstand 12,000 simultaneous strikes. And that is just what they have today. Give them a reason to develop new weapons, weapons designed specifically to kill us, and within a generation, they will have things we cannot even imagine. One of the council leaders spoke up. You speak as if these creatures are more dangerous than us. We have conquered 47 species. We have destroyed worlds. Are you telling me that these primitives are more violent than the Vellani Empire? No, Torak said quietly. I am telling you that they are more violent than we ever imagined possible. We conquer for resources, for power, for expansion. Those are rational goals. Humans do not need rational goals. They kill for pride, for revenge, for ideas. They kill their own families. They destroy their own cities. They would rather die than submit to an enemy. He showed them Hunsik's testimony, the old man's story of survival, of carrying his dead sister through the snow, of teaching peace while never forgetting the horror of war. This is what they do to themselves, Torak said. This is what they consider normal. And you want to give them a reason to direct all that violence at us? The council deliberated in whispers. Torak waited, his heart pounding. His reputation, his career, possibly his life hung on their decision. No Velani commander had ever recommended retreat. The shame would follow him forever. But the alternative was worse. Finally, the senior leader spoke. The council has reached a decision. Your recommendation is accepted. The human planet will be designated as a quarantine zone. No Velani ship will approach within 1 light year of their system. No contact will be made. No resources will be extracted. He leaned back in his chair, his yellow eyes thoughtful. Perhaps in 1,000 years, when they have destroyed themselves or evolved beyond their violent nature, we will reconsider. But for now, they are to be left alone. Completely alone. Torak bowed his head. Thank you, Council Leader. Do not thank me, Commander. You have saved the Empire from a costly mistake. But you have also shown us something disturbing. There are species in this galaxy that are more dangerous than we realized. We must be more careful in the future. The transmission ended. On Earth, it was sunrise in Seoul when the Velani fleet began to move. Diplomat Donghu stood on the roof of the United Nations building, watching the alien ships break orbit and accelerate toward the outer solar system. Yoonji stood beside him, her military uniform crisp despite the long night without sleep. She had been his liaison throughout the crisis, translating the technical details of human warfare into terms the aliens could understand. They are leaving, she said. It actually worked. Dongwu nodded slowly. He felt no joy, no triumph, only a heavy sadness. Yes, we showed them our shame and they ran away. We won by proving that we are monsters. We are not monsters, Yoonji said firmly. We are survivors. We do what we must to survive. Do we? Dongwu turned to look at her. We showed them the Holocaust, the atomic bombs, the endless wars over nothing. We showed them children killed by their own neighbors. We showed them everything that we should be ashamed of, and we used it as a weapon. He looked back at the sky, where the last alien ships were vanishing into the distance. What does it say about us that our history of violence is our greatest defense? Yoonji was silent for a long moment. Then she said, It says that we are complicated. We are capable of terrible things and wonderful things. We can destroy and we can create. We can hate and we can love. Perhaps that is what makes us dangerous. Not our weapons or our violence, but our complexity. We are unpredictable. We are contradictory. We are human. In Bizen, Suho sat with his grandson Minho on their small balcony. They watched the alien ships leave together, 2 generations united by the experience of surviving a threat they had never expected. They are really going, Minho said with wonder. Yes, Suho patted the boy's shoulder. They looked into our souls and saw what we are. And they decided they did not want to fight us. But we are not all violent, grandfather. We have peace now. We have not had a world war in almost 100 years. That is true. Suho smiled gently. And that is perhaps the most remarkable thing about humans. We have all that violence inside us, all that rage and fear and hatred. But we choose every day not to use it. We choose peace, even though war is in our blood. He pointed at the sky where the stars were fading in the morning light. Those aliens, they saw our capacity for violence and called us monsters. But I think they missed the point. The real miracle is not that we can destroy. The real miracle is that we can choose not to. Every single day, billions of us wake up and decide to be kind instead of cruel, to build instead of destroy, to love instead of hate. His old eyes were wet with tears. That is humanity's true secret. Not our violence, our restraint. The fact that we could burn the world, but we choose not to. That takes more strength than any weapon, more courage than any battle. Across the planet, people watched the sky with mixed emotions. Some felt proud that their species had scared away the invaders. Others felt ashamed that their history of violence had been exposed to the universe. Most felt both at the same time. In the archive of human conflict, Jiwan walked through the empty halls alone. The screens still played their endless footage. The photographs still watched with their dead eyes. She stopped before the wall of faces, the victims of genocide who had been dead for decades, but were never forgotten. "We used you," she whispered to the dead. "We used your suffering to save ourselves. I hope you can forgive us." There was no answer. There never was. The dead kept their silence as they always had. But somewhere in the universe, a fleet of alien conquerors carried the memory of what they had seen. They would tell others. Word would spread. Species across the galaxy would learn of Earth and its terrifying inhabitants. They would learn that humans were not prey to be conquered, but predators to be avoided. And humanity would continue on, carrying its burden of violence and hope, darkness and light. They had proven themselves capable of the worst horrors the universe had ever seen. But they had also proven something else. They could choose to be better. And every day that they made that choice, every day that the guns stayed silent and the bombs stayed in their silos, they were proving that their capacity for darkness was matched by their capacity for light. That was humanity's true power, not the ability to destroy, the ability to choose not to. And that made them more terrifying than any weapon ever could. Because a species that could resist its own nature was a species that could resist anything. The aliens understood this now, and they would never forget. The end.